Hell and Judgment and Eternity. Part 7. Gehenna, the Valley of Hinnom. Chapter 1. In most Bibles, Gehenna is usually translated as hell. It was the Valley of Hinnom. Children had been burned there by the Israelites as sacrifices to the Ammonite god Moloch. Later, it was made a garbage dump, where dead bodies and rubbish were burned in a fire which smouldered endlessly. See link 9, Gehenna, Hades, Tartarus. We learn to live less in death and more in fellowship with God.
Romans 8. If you are living according to the flesh, you die. You have not received a spirit of slavery, leading to fear again, but you have received a spirit of adoption as sons, by which we cry out, Abba, Father.
Jesus told the disciples not to fear persecution by men. They were not even to fear physical death.
Matthew 10. Look, I send you out as sheep in the midst of wolves. They will hand you over to the courts and scourge you. But when they hand you over, do not worry about how or what you are to say. Therefore do not fear them. Do not fear those other people who kill the body. And Luke adds in chapter 12 verse 4, and after that have no more that they can do. But are unable to kill the soul.
Our attention and reverence is to be towards God.
But rather fear God, give reverence to Him.
He has such power that he could apply the fires of Gehenna not only in our body, but also in our soul.
Who is able to destroy both soul and body in Gehenna. Luke says, after he has killed, has authority to cast into Gehenna.
What does God kill? The Greek word kill is from a word used in 1 Corinthians 5, verse 5. Speaking of destroying the flesh of someone who believes in him. In order to save their spirit. God destroys the flesh and throws that waste into the rubbish fires.
Are not 2 sparrows sold for a cent? And yet not one of them will fall to the ground, unless your Father wills it. So do not fear.
This passage isn't about hell. It is about not fearing those who might physically kill them. Because they were following Jesus. The physical death is not to be feared. What we should be concerned about is making sure we are cooperating with God in the work He is doing in our soul. See Isaiah 10 shortly. God destroys both soul and body. Jesus brought a sword to cut off the old to be burnt.
Do not think that I came to bring peace on the earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword.
God is burning off thorns from among his own remnant. Completely destroying soul and body.
Isaiah 10. First, a brief summary. Among his stout ones, a fire is kindled like a burning flame. It has burned and devoured his thorns and his briars. He destroys both soul and body, but a remnant returns. A complete destruction is decreed.
Now, here is this passage in Isaiah 10 in more detail. Both body and soul are to be destroyed. Why does all seem completely destroyed?
Isaiah 10. Among his stout ones, a fire is kindled like a burning flame. It has burned and devoured his thorns and his briars. And he destroys the glory of his forest, and of his fruitful garden, both soul and body. And it is as when a sick man wastes away. And the rest of the trees of his forest are so small in number that a child could write them down.
How hard it can be to make sense of sorrow and calamity. So why is it that God seems to destroy so completely? Because all the old flesh is destroyed, except a small remnant which is righteous before God.
Now in that day the remnant of Israel, and those of the house of Jacob who have escaped, never again rely on the one who struck them, but truly rely on the Lord, the Holy One of Israel.
God identifies the remnant as when we have learned to rely on Him. Fire and destruction is the result of relying on other things.
A remnant returns, the remnant of Jacob, to the mighty God. For though your people may be like the sand of the sea, only a remnant of them returns. A destruction is decreed, overflowing with righteousness. For a complete destruction, one that is decreed. The Lord God of hosts executes in the midst of the whole land.
This destruction is in the midst of the land. That is, in the inner parts. God intends to complete this purging until whatever is keeping us in a yoke wears out.
In a very little while my indignation is completed. My anger by their wearing out. His burden is removed from your shoulders, and his yoke from your neck.
The troubles aren't permanent. This is speaking about troubles that are part of God's process of pruning and burning. It has nothing to do with permanent annihilation or future punishment. We have been captive to the old man. Now we are beginning to have freedom in more and more areas. See also in Matthew 5 and 18. We are given a definition of what the fires of Gehenna are for. Parts of a person are cut off, obviously not literally, and thrown into the fire, the fires of hell, Gehenna, obviously not literally. This way, the rest of the person, the remnant, can remain safe. The tongue is one small part which defiles the entire body. This world of iniquity is burned up in Gehenna.
James 3. So also the tongue is a small part of the body, and yet it boasts of great things. See how great a forest is set aflame by such a small fire. And the tongue is a fire, the very world of iniquity. The tongue is set among our members as that which defiles the entire body. And sets on fire the course of our life.
The course of our life can be paraphrased from the original Greek as the continuous cycle of our inherited lineage.
And is being burned up by the fires of Gehenna.
Those things are being burned up, literally is being set on fire, is being burned up. Now in our lifetime by the fires of Gehenna, hell. This is talking about God dealing with the world of iniquity in us. The tongue, what we speak, reveals our old sinful nature. It is identified as a major source of defilement. Which can pop out of our mouth before we have time to stop ourselves. The consequences of this can be fire in our lives. Is this similar to Jeremiah 9? God's people need refining in fire because of what is inside the heart.
Jeremiah 9. Therefore the Lord of hosts says, I am refining them in the fire and assaying them, testing them. For what else can I do in the presence of the daughter of my people? Their tongue is a deadly arrow, it speaks deceit. With his mouth one speaks peace to his neighbour, but inwardly he sets an ambush for him. Do I not take note of this and attend to it, declares the Lord?
See link 10 for could, punish or attend to. Jesus taught that there is little difference between murder and anger. And anger is enough to end up in court.
Matthew 5. You have heard that the ancients were told, you shall not commit murder, and whoever commits murder shall be liable to the court. But I say to you that every one who is angry with his brother shall be guilty before the court.
But continuing this anger will result in worse than the law. We have to face burning fires working on us.
Whoever curses a brother by saying to them, you fool, shall be liable, guilty enough to go into the fires of Gehenna. Therefore be reconciled to your brother.
There can be bitterness rooted deep inside us. And when things flare up, we feel angry This process can continue for a long time, through sleepless nights. Until God has burned up those things in the rubbish fires. The offspring we produce passes through a selection process. Through the rubbish fires of Gehenna.
Matthew 23. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! Because you travel around on sea and land to make one convert. And when he becomes one, you make him twice as much a son of Gehenna as yourselves. You serpents, you brood of vipers! How will you avoid the judgment of the fires of Gehenna?
What survives the fires in a refined state is acceptable to God. The Greek word for judgment, or judging, also contains the meaning of separating and selecting. See link 11, judging, krino, krisis.
Link 9. Gehenna, Hades, Tartarus. Matthew 10, verse 28. God is able to destroy both soul and body in Gehenna. I came to bring a sword. Compare this with Isaiah 10, verses 16 and 17. A fire is kindled like a burning flame. It has burned and devoured his thorns and his briars. He destroys both soul and body, but a remnant returns. A complete destruction is decreed. The repeated principle in Scripture is that God is looking for either what He can rescue in each person's heart and life, or what is only fit for the sword and flame. What is Gehenna? Based on notes from Encyclopedia Britannica. Gehenna, also called Gehinnom, originally was a valley west and south of Jerusalem, where children were burned. As sacrifices to the Ammonite god Moloch. This practice was carried out by the Israelites during the reigns of King Solomon in the 10th century BC. And King Manasseh in the 7th century BC. And continued until the Babylonian exile, in the 6th century BC. Gehenna was later made a garbage center, to discourage a reintroduction of such sacrifices. The imagery of the burning of humans supplied the concept of hellfire to Jewish and Christian eschatology. It is also noted in the Talmud, a compendium of Jewish law, and commentary. As a place of purification, after which one is released from further torture. Hades and Tartarus. Where did these ideas of hell come from? Hell was part of Greek mythology. The Greek myth of Hades was associated with various names of deities of the underworld. There were names such as Pluto and Zeus, and many others. Then, far below Hades was an abyss called Tartarus. Which was originally thought of as the place of fire and punishment in the lower world. But later it became used almost in the same way as Hades. The Greek word for Hades is used to translate the Hebrew word Sheol, denoting a dark region of the dead. Note: the Bible simply uses Sheol and Hades as death and the grave, not a place called hell. The Greeks also had a concept of paradise, which they called Elysium. This was originally where heroes went, but later became thought of as the place for good people to go. Another term for hell is Orcus, the abyss, the bottomless pit. This is probably the origin of the orcs in Lord of the Rings. Link 10. A note on the phrase, to take note, and attend to it. It's the Hebrew word, porkad, Strong's 6485. Its meanings are, to attend to, muster, number, reckon, visit, punish, appoint, look after, care for, to pay attention to, observe, to seek, etc. It is used several hundred times in the Hebrew, but is only used in the sense of punishment in a smaller percentage of them. Whenever we have looked outside the window today, we have been able to watch sheep and lambs standing in falling snow. It occurred to me that it's easier to think of the farmer coming to muster them and care for them, than it is to think of him punishing them for standing out in the snow. Similarly, why would God punish us for inheriting our sinful old flesh man? Is he not more likely to give us the attention we need? Separating, selecting, judging. Greek, Strong's 2919 and 20, krino, verb, a doing word, and krisis, noun, a naming word. These Greek words are usually translated in the Bible as judgment or judging. They mean separating, selecting, judging. They contain the meaning of separating, that is, selecting the good from the bad. God looks at all the variations inside us, chooses what is best, and rejects the bad. We get the word eclectic from this original Greek concept. Here are a couple of examples of the Greek eklektos. Mark 13, verse 27. He shall gather together his chosen, eklektos, from the four winds, from one end of the sky to the other. James 2 verse 5. God has chosen, eklegomai, the poor in the world, to become rich in faith, and to be heirs of the kingdom. So whenever judgment appears throughout these presentations, it may well be useful to see if it is also speaking of this separating. I have found the Bible consistent right from Genesis to Revelation. Selecting and separating always seem to fit into the context of judgment. This is a positive, loving process, not a negative prelude to torture. So being a judgmental exclusive fundamentalist does not match God's generosity.
This was Hell and Judgment and Eternity, Part 7.